Hello, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Trevor. And today we'll be collectively catching up on cinema, courtesy of our guest host today, my brother Matt.
Hello. So Kyle, I have to ask, was this the worst movie you've ever seen in your life?
I've seen some really bad movies, but yes, this might actually be the worst movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, I got some pretty angry texts back from Kyle, while he was watching this, actually. I hadn't watched it yet, so I was like, oh God, what is this? So, Matt, what was it that you had us catch up on?
A little-known film called The Dark Backward.
I was excited about it because I saw the cast. I'm like, Bill Paxton, Wayne Newton of all people.
Yeah.
And then Judd Nelson, like, The Dark Backward. I'm like, ooh, this sounds intriguing. Like, this sounds interesting.
Yeah, and Laura Flynn Boyle, who was probably just stepping off the set of Twin Peaks at the time, it's like, yeah, I could see this being like a quirky good time. You know, even the name, it's like, yeah, this seems like straight out of 1991, but...
And then you've got fellow Rat Packer Rob Lowe in there, too. Okay,
yeah.
this should be fun.
Yeah, he made the front credits. I don't really know why, but...
He was huge at the time.
Yeah,
this was in 91, I want to say, when it came out.
Yeah,
so.
91.
Yeah, 1991.
Yeah.
The biggest reason that I think this movie warranted a watch is that you will not see a movie where the producers and whoever were the money folk literally contributed nothing. Like, you don't see that in this day and age. And actually, like, what drew me to actually finally breaking down and watching this movie was all the discussion you're seeing around the James Gunn thing in Disney, where you're talking about this well-established director who's made $1 billion franchise, essentially out of nothing, and all of a sudden he's canned for something that happened 10 years ago, and there's all sorts of debates whether that was warranted. My opinion of that has always been that it was because he had reached a place where he had established himself as being so financially viable that he deserved creative freedom. Mm-hmm. And when you consider his background coming from making those schlocky horror fest films, when you consider his past tweets that got him into trouble, which are dealing with kitty diddling and all these awful things that should not be out there, that puts an executive in a company in a tough bind to essentially be like, yeah, you deserve the freedom to make what you want, but what happens when we let you run free and do whatever you want? Well, you get the fucking dark backward. So that to me was what was so fascinating, was watching it, because you're right, that cast at the time especially was pretty big.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, they were all drawn to it because they really loved the script. Like, Judd Nelson actually went to clubs in Los Angeles and performed the material from the movie.
Wow.
To bomb, just to prove to the director that he cared so much about. Wayne Newton agreed to do it at a major discount just because he felt like the character was so realistic to people he'd worked with.
Wow.
So there's a lot of components to this that was fascinating to me, that from looking at it just from a cinema standpoint, not from actually the product itself, because the product is dog shit.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, pure dog shit. I mean, it revels in it. It practically, like, there's garbage literally in every scene.
Yeah,
literally every scene.
So, I mean...
No, I'm kind of intrigued, because to think of the script being the element that brought people to this project, because there's a lot of quirky personalities in this cast. Like, Laura Flynn Boyle, she's got a little bit of a screw loose. Rob Lowe has done some funky stuff. Like, these are people who are okay with the strange. Like, but I know the director, his primary background is that of a writer, but the script in this movie, what ended up getting onto the celluloid is just crap.
Yeah, I want to know where it went wrong. Where did it...
No, even structurally, though. Like, the dialogue it feels mostly improvised. Like, the structure of the story is meandering and feels totally without substance. I don't really understand. This feels like one of those jokes, like an Andy Kaufman-esque joke, where it's like the only person who gets this is the person who's making it. But
Yeah.
based on the quality of the performances, though, not the script, but the quality of the performances, you can see that passion. Like, you can see that these people believed in this. Because Judd Nelson is not half-assing it.
No.
He was a major star when this came out, too. Like, and in fact, like, he was actually like a borderline, like, action star, I believe.
Was this after St. Elmo's Fire?
So this was, what? Post-Breakfast Club, post-Transformers the movie, pre-Steel. So, yeah, he still had some shine on him.
No, I mean, he was kind of a big thing for him. He had a moment there. So.
Absolutely.
Let's go over the story, and then I'll discuss some of my thoughts on what you're describing.
Let's actually
here,
get into what the dark backward is.
And I'm really curious to see let the hatred flow, because this was not, you were not intending to enjoy this. As fucked up as that sounds.
This is the first time I've met Matt, and this was my introduction. It's like, oh, this is the movie my brother decided we should watch for the podcast.
I was like, hey Kyle, how about we do a guest slot this time? Let's see how that works out. And it's like, you son of a...
I was like, this is almost like getting a glimpse into who I'm meeting. I'm like, this is not a good start. This is weird.
I'm surprised you didn't shake his hand and look at him cockeyed. Like,
he cleared it up before you got here. I'm like, okay, that's a good reason. But go ahead, yes.
Yeah, Trevor, run us through. What's the dark backward?
So, very, very brief summary. The dark backward takes place in some nether realm of some sort. This is not real. This is not the real world. Like Matt mentioned, there's garbage everywhere. There's this singular brand. Blumps is completely ubiquitous,
owns
across
everything.
Every building, every bit of signage you see, every advertisement you see in this film belongs to this Blumps pork company of some sort.
Never explained.
It's never explained, but it shows an attention to detail, which I appreciate. It contributes nothing other than a couple of little Easter eggs here and there. So,
coming out of the 80s, too, that was a big thing in cinema, having that was the birth of the corporate world.
Oh, okay.
So you saw a lot of films would feature kind of these all-encompassing corporations that just own everything. Yeah.
OCP.
Yeah, so that was very much kind of a playful riff on that, I think, too, of just the shitty universe that these characters exist in that has already been taken over by this corporate entity, and they're just kind of floundering on the outskirts.
Yeah, you can tell they're like the wretched refuse of this world. Our two central characters are in fact garbage men and spend quite a bit of their free time just rifling through garbage so they can take shit home to their garbage apartments. So our central character is Judd Nelson, who, as Matt mentioned, he's attempting to be a stand-up comic, and his best buddy in the world, Bill Paxton, who is just grinning and mugging more so than I think I've ever seen a human being do. Just the lengths to which he takes this performance is just... There's over the top, and then there's Pacino level over the top, and then there's this. I don't know what to call this.
It's if you take Bill Paxton from True Lies and then Bill Paxton from Weird Science, and then that gross thing she turns him into at the end of Weird Science and put it all into one. I feel like that's what he is in this.
The shit monster.
The shit monster, yeah. He's just all those things into one.
That's actually an amazing comparison.
Well done, Kyle.
Yeah, that really, really encompasses the dark backward.
So... we have Judd Nelson, who's trying to be a stand-up comic, his buddy Bill Paxton, who is helping him try to be a stand-up comic, and then they hit a little speed bump at some point because Judd Nelson develops a little bump on his back.
Honest to God, I forgot about that until just now.
The single most important plot development in the movie.
Because all I'm thinking of is, now when I think back to it, I just think of the set. The set design. That's
mostly what this movie is.
I think you're onto something there, though, because I think that's a central part of this theme of this movie, is that while he gains this grotesque, extremity, it's actually not the grossest thing you see on film.
Not at all.
By any stretch. In fact, it's kind of playful and funny and almost sweet in an endearing sort of goofy way.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of how this movie operates. Is it's supposed to be imagine if you find out your buddy just grew an arm out of his back. It would be horrifying. But in this universe, it's actually just kind of like a novel. Okay.
Yeah, it's treated as a profitable element of his being. So this bump that he has on his back, as Matt mentioned, eventually grows into an arm, which after hooking up with Wayne Newton, who their talent agent, they try to exploit as a means to get his comedy off the ground without putting any effort into developing his comedy. So he's just a shitty comedian with an arm growing out of his back. And from there, it's supposed to be a rise to fame kind of story that doesn't... if you were to lay out the ground covered by this story, it's probably 3 feet. It's not a journey of miles or hours. It's more just Oh, we moved like 3 feet down the road. That's nice.
Can I bring up the director, Adam Rifkin, I believe is who it was?
Yeah.
I don't know if he was a writer, but I believe he directed or wrote Mouse Hunt, Small Soldiers, and Detroit Rock City.
He wrote Mouse Hunt.
He wrote Mouse Hunt.
He did not direct.
I was going to say.
I think he directed Detroit Rock City. If
Yes,
I
he
recall,
did.
that was his big one.
And
That
then,
was one that jumped out at me in his wiki or his IMDb.
and what about Small Soldiers? Was
He may have directed that one.
okay.
Phil Hartman's last film.
All
I
right.
feel like that movie too kind of went through a developmental hell where
Yeah,
it was
absolutely
like
did.
half done by some people and then other people jumped in and contributed. Like
It shows in the tone because it's kind of a nasty film.
I actually just rewatched it a couple of months ago. It's kind of dark. I remember as a kid, like it was kind of dark.
No, it's actually
very dark,
It's
yeah.
somewhat violent, and there are some genuinely unsettling images, and it's mean spirited at times too.
sounds very much like The Dark Backward.
Mean spirited, yeah.
Jeez.
I mean, these characters are garbage people. Like it feels like we're hanging out in the gutter, kind of.
More or less.
But complete tangent on my part. Sorry, but I mentioned early on the concept of a children's story, of a fable. That's what came to mind the whole time I was watching this. It felt like
Okay.
it should have been a 20-minute or 15-minute animated short or something, or a story you would read to your kid for like a bedtime story.
Well, it literally opens that way.
Yeah, and it literally
it's a
opens
story
that
book,
way
like-
with like carnival music, the
Yeah.
most annoying fucking soundtrack I've heard in ages.
It was driving me nuts too. I had a feeling it would drive
It's
me nuts.
so
as well.
overbearing, and just the instrumentation is beyond cheap. It's awful, and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, did you notice both of you? Both of you. Did you notice how many like fucking weird noises were in the background of every scene?
Yeah. Just the diegetic noises. Yeah.
It's just like tones and ticks and stuff just in the background. It's,
Well, the
that
scene,
stupid Felix the cat clock in his apartment.
every time we see Laura Flynn Boyle's character, the TV that they have is playing the exact same thing. It's the same noise. I don't know if that's just to be like, this lady's losing her mind.
Right.
Yeah, but Max Payne.
Yeah.
Do you remember the baseball bat boy show or whatever?
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of. Was that show that's just on in the background? That and RoboCop. I'd buy that for $1 show that everyone thinks is the most hilarious fucking thing in the world, but we as the audience don't even get an inkling of what it's about. It's just we keep cutting to people just going, he said the thing.
Well, we'll get into that when we get towards the conclusion of the film, because I think it's tied into that when he makes his big break, actually.
Yeah, and again, keep in the back of your mind while we're talking about this, I do think this was meant to be like a children's book or something. Because if you think of it in those terms, I could see it actually being pretty good if you trimmed all the fat and all the weird shit, of which there's
A lot.
innumerable instances.
I get what you're saying, because, I mean, Bill Paxton's almost a cartoon character, just in the movie. Like, he's just so over the top.
I mean, if you break the story down to its bare essentials, it's like you have your schlubby hero. He gets a weird thing about him.
Mm-hmm.
He uses the weird thing to get like a taste of happiness. The weird thing's taken away from him, and then he has to learn how to be himself.
See, I would argue, like, put it this way, like, what perspective do you think this movie was told from? Like, by that, do you feel like this was a movie where you're just observing people in a universe interacting? Because I'll tell you what I thought was, when I watched it, I got the impression that everything you're seeing is through Judd Nelson's character's perspective. Mm-hmm. And with that, you're taking into account his neuroses, you're taking into account how anxious he is. So his performance on stage truly isn't him being that bad. That's why he sweats profusely.
Yeah.
That's why he's super awkward. That's why he stutters. That's why his girlfriend seems so indifferent to him all the time, when in fact she's probably just a casual character who's interacting with him off and on, but he is so desperate to have her attention, to have her be supportive, and she's not.
It's interesting you say that, because I did notice that for people doing stand-up comedy, you have hecklers. There's not a single heckler.
Exactly. Like, just no one gives a shit. And that's where I think with Bill Paxton's character, I think that's why he was so over the top, was because he's supposed to represent the dipshit friend who's actually more charismatic, more kind of has the personality of the comedian, draws people's attention, like, no matter what he does, he seems happy. He seems like he's enjoying things.
He's the happiest man.
But he's also a disgusting human being, and that's
Exactly.
where it's kind of tied to it too. If you're a struggling comedian, that's how you view it. The guy who, it comes so easy for him. He just goes out, people love him, they eat it up, he does whatever the hell he wants. Like, that to me was kind of how I saw it more so, was that, like, Wayne Newton is... Obviously, he's a greasy guy. He's a talent agent, but he's exceptionally greasy because, from Judd Nelson's perspective, he's just looking at him as, how's this guy going to fuck me over? That's why sometimes he has the mustache. Sometimes he doesn't.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
It's like when he's especially greasy, he has a mustache. When he's being kind of a supportive, more father figure, it disappears. Like,
Yeah, see, I hadn't thought of that. Like,
don't make me watch this
because
again.
the entire reality of it is very exaggerated. Everyone feels like a caricature, and I especially see it with Bill Paxton's character. Because that performance...
Yeah, it's way over the top.
I mean, but it was way over the top, but it was also very clearly guided, because it was far too consistent to just be over the top. There's some instances in there where he's, like, downright terrifying. Like,
right.
I remember there's one scene when he's very excited that he got Wayne Newton's business card, and he's handing it over to him, and the lighting is very dark. They're in Judd Nelson's apartment, and his eyebrows are shooting up to his hairline. He never blinks, and everything he says is screamed, and he's like vibrating with just energy.
I like how my brother points out this scene, not the necrophilia scene that happens before.
I wrote that shit down. That's when I text you, I'm like, fuck you.
that to me actually really upset me. And the only thing I can think that it might be in there for, I don't know the timeline, but what I will say is that I think that Bill Paxton, as an actor, is so charismatic and likable. And I think especially in this era when this film came out, that they had to throw something in there just to really emphasize that, like, no, you can't like this guy. Like, you need to hate this character.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think you might be right on that.
And it was way over the top, and it was gross. And actually, that scene alone makes it so I will never watch this movie again, because it actually really bothered me.
Yeah.
Everything outside of it, though, I see bits and pieces where it's surrealism. It's not great, but it's...
Well, that's like one scene that I can't really place it. Like, I don't understand why it's there. Other than for like purely utilitarian purposes. Like, in terms of contributing to the actual structure of the story, it brings nothing to the table. And I kind of viewed his character as like the person who is wanting the fame more than Judd Nelson.
He's encouraging, but for his own means.
Yeah,
like,
he wants an escape. And in many ways, he's far more desperate than Judd Nelson. In fact, Judd Nelson's character doesn't seem terribly concerned with fame or fortune. He just wants acknowledgement, like you had mentioned.
Think about like you were saying that they put the necrophilia scene.
Yeah,
Is sexual assault on a corpse considered necrophilia? Is it all just bundled into one thing? We'll just say yeah.
Yeah, we'll just say yes.
Yeah, it's a very bad thing.
But think about how I feel about Walton Goggins, because
we always bring him up.
But but this is relevant because in Predators, like, he's a piece of shit in that movie, but I still like him. Like, you're not supposed to like him in that movie.
And there's that horrible bit of dialogue where he's talking about all the stuff he wants to do when he gets out, and it's so poor. It's a terrible line.
Yeah.
Like, but I agree. Like, that stands out again because if you take out that line, he's actually a really likable, crazy serial killer.
But he's the most affable serial killer you'll ever.
Like, actually, everything about him is likable. He sacrifices himself.
He took a bullet for that whole crew. But he got the juiciest death in that whole movie.
They should have had him kiss on Danny Trejo's neck for a little bit, and we would have been like, this is a disgusting character. We don't want to like him at all.
There you go.
They could have taken
But I agree. Like, I think that was very much kind of put in there as well. Like, as a reminder to the audience, like, you need to hate this guy.
Yeah.
And I think with Bill Paxton's character, especially if you're looking at it from perspective, maybe if this is coming from Judd Nelson's perspective, like, even at the end, like, I agree with you. He seems more desperate in the way he carries himself. But he still leaves with his girlfriend to go to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Like, he still wears the same shitty garbage man outfit when he starts performing with Judd Nelson. Like, he doesn't change who he is.
This is true.
Like, even when they start getting relatively, like, famous, like, he doesn't start eating non-garbage items. Like, he continues to eat the grossest stuff you can imagine.
The chicken, to me, I think, was the grossest image in the whole movie.
I could not handle that.
That's why I can't make things like, fajitas or whatever. Where it's like...
So, the doctor, James Caan.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it a little bit differently.
again, this kind of plays into your theme of exaggerated characters. Because imagine being Judd Nelson's character. Well, I mean, imagine being the writer of this fucking movie, or imagine being a person, not even anyone associated with these characters, just a person who walked this path. I'm sure at some point we've all been to a doctor who thought we were wimpy or stop being a pussy or something like that. There's a lot of instances in this movie where like characters have interactions with each other that feel like slice of life moments that the writer was maybe projecting a little bit.
Go ahead.
I was just saying,
James Caan.
That makes me think. Well, James Caan, but real quick, the nurse. So I thought it was odd because the nurse is hot. I'm just gonna say, and she's like coming on to him, and like
Out of nowhere.
maybe that's his perception. Like she's really friendly, and he was taking that as she's hitting on me. Like no, she was just being really friendly to me.
And that's exactly what I was thinking too. Because like in actuality, like he's just this hopeless guy who has no social skills.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you're going to see somebody who dolls himself up for work and is exceptionally friendly. He's, she's coming on to me.
Coming on to me here. Like, no.
The one sequence that made me laugh more than anything in this whole movie was when you first see James Caan.
Oh, he's great.
And he's washing his hands and he cuts himself. And he just goes, fuck! And then he starts sucking on his things. And then he just immediately goes to, like, deal with his patient. It's just...
The Band-Aid for me, him just like...
And
It's like, I've seen this a million times.
It happens all the time,
Yeah.
I had a legit laugh at that.
I like James Caan, and like I said, the performances in this movie are not actually that bad. Like I do think Bill Paxton is annoying, but I don't think it's a low effort performance.
This is like the only movie I think I've seen him in that I just didn't like him.
No, he annoyed the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I wanted him to go away, but there was a lot of him. There's that one scene where he invades Judd Nelson's apartment and like pressures him into... He basically exploits him.
Yeah.
And it kind of like sums up their relationship. It's hinted at, like the movie teases this quite a few times early on, but that one scene is when it finally becomes clear that it's not 100% genuine relationship that these two have. That like there is someone who is making demands of the other one.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's not a friendship.
I mean,
they are coworkers, so there's kind of that side of it too.
It is and it isn't, but it's an abusive relationship where Bill Paxton is definitely trying to exploit Judd Nelson to get something, to get somewhere in life. Because that's also like his probably his lowest moment in the story is when he's hanging out with those ladies. He's expressing some very dark thoughts that are not positive in any way, but he's covering it up with booze and boobs.
Boobs and boobs. Booze and boobs.
He's also having a fatal four-way with 300 plus pound women on Judd Nelson's couch.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
There's anything wrong with that, but I was going to ask, so is there a reason why Judd Nelson is insanely skinny in this movie?
Yeah, I didn't know he was that small.
He's not.
I didn't think he was. That really stood out too.
Because you look at John Bender, like John Bender was kind of a big dude. I mean, granted, he was taller than Emilio Estevez, but so was everybody else.
Well, and he had leather gloves.
But like you could still see he had a build to him. Like he was
right. No, he looked like he was a 16-year-old when he'd have his shirt off in this movie. Like,
I thought
it was really awkward. Like
I thought he was paid in painkillers. Like he just looked so skinny.
Yeah, he bird chested and like
his arms were noodles. Like,
he was physically very, very small. He looked like Adrian Brody before Predators or something.
I was going to say he looked like Christian Bale in The Machinist.
Well, no, it's not that far, but far.
Crazy skinny.
It was still pretty, noticeable. It was very awkward. I don't know enough about him in that era to be honest, but that is something that stands out.
Well, if he was so committed to the character, like you said, he was going to comedy clubs and doing stand up. Is he just maybe John Bender is Judd Nelson? Is Judd Nelson? Maybe he is actually like a beefier guy, and he's like, I'm supposed to be playing really sad, introverted, socially awkward guy. Maybe he went more method with this and just lost a bunch of weight to look even more.
I think that's a fair assumption.
It clearly meant something to him, so I wouldn't be surprised if he dropped a few pounds just for this role. Yeah. I mean, certainly, it's what I like to call a complete performance, where head to toe he's in it. Where it's like when we were talking about Dan Aykroyd in Nothing But Trouble, which has some parallels to this movie. It's where not only is the the actor like saying the lines. He's really feeling them. He's putting every inch of his body into it. Like his body language really impressed me in this movie. Like he's definitely he's contorting himself into some very unnatural shapes that lend a little something to the performance, even though it's in a shit movie. And he's also wearing heavy prosthetics on his back, which probably was very uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
No, that was noticeable. The only other thing I can think of is maybe he was just one of those guys that it was just never natural when he looked bigger, and that this is more what his natural body weight is when he's not really bulking up for a role.
Oh, like you said, next to Emilio Estevez, everyone looks pretty big.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so anyway, they start getting a little successful with Wayne Newton. He finally agrees to take him on when he develops the third arm, and that becomes their act. It's Bill Paxton playing the accordion on stage. Judd Nelson comes out, tells a shitty joke, and then he does this little twirl, and everyone gets to see the arm. And they're a freak show.
Yeah, again, he never devotes any time to really developing his jokes. It's Kyle is imitating the twirl right now.
Like, I thought it was funny. I actually thought the twirl was kind of funny because it's so awkward.
Yeah, it's not. See, when I use the word twirl usually has like an element of like velocity, some some kinetic energy behind it.
The Elephant Man could turn quicker.
Yeah, this is like just like a penguin just like shuffling around in a circle with a third arm that's clearly on fishing line being hoisted up and down. It takes like a full 20 seconds to complete, and yeah, Bill Paxton is just mugging and plugging away at that accordion the whole time. Oh yeah, and then like one of the key developments in their act is that Bill Paxton decides to switch from the left to the right. So this act goes from just being man with arm, and Wayne Newton's like, nah, we gotta get some music in on this. And then it's like, nah, we gotta get the music moving from left to right. And there's actually a pretty funny scene when the one club owner, the guy with the heavy-set gentleman with the cowboy hat, like, instead of taking issue with the third arm and
the shitty comedy,
the accordion, he takes issue with, why is that man with the accordion moving around all the time? He keeps jumping from left to right.
He's asking the important questions.
Yeah, he flips his shit so bad that he kicks them out. Purely because Bill Paxton has like restless leg syndrome or something.
Twinkie Doodle shut that shit down. He's like, don't move back and forth, man. Just stay in one spot.
Twinkie Doodle is our climax.
I thought he was funny. I don't know why.
Well, let's get into it then. Let's
I mean, we're there.
Twinkie Doodle is the equivalent of the I'd buy that for $1 show in this universe. Twinkie Doodle is on TV in the background of a lot of scenes in this movie.
Yes.
Think of like a really dark Captain Kangaroo kind of.
Yeah, it's like Howdy Doody or Captain Kangaroo, or was Froggy the Gremlin?
Nobody knows.
One of those old timey variety shows, basically. Mm-hmm. Most notably, Judd Nelson's mother is watching the show. Pretty much every scene we see her in. The climax of the movie is basically Wayne Newton manages to score our fellas a gig on the Twinkie Doodle show. And Kyle, you sound like you had some thoughts on Twinkie Doodle.
No, we should put a pin in his mother though, because I think I've completely forgot. I think she's an important character.
Yeah, she is,
especially looking through the way you're looking at it.
Through the lens you're talking about. Like, I could totally see this character or this writer having that kind of relationship with their mother and having it be exaggerated in that fashion.
She's using his self-esteem as a speed bag.
No, let's just get into it. I mean, honestly, she really reminded me a lot of, and I don't know if he drew from it because he's on a different level, but Aronofsky for Requiem with a Dream, a Dream, the mom in that one. Like, there were a lot of parallels, I felt like, just outside. I feel like the mom wasn't as bad in Requiem, but in terms of how she treated others, but still, like, kind of that same sense of, like, you're stuck in this shit apartment, you don't really leave, you watch the same shit on TV every day, you're slowly going crazy as a result.
Yeah, they just manifest a little differently because she's actually in Requiem for a Dream. She's actually taking diet pills, which at the time were technically speed, and it actually fuels to her kind of losing it. Where it seems like his mother in the Dark Backward probably doesn't feel good about herself, so she's projecting her. Like, you're never going to amount to anything. I don't know what you're doing that for.
My
You're
kid's
stupid.
a garbage man.
She's just sitting in a bed smoking all day. She's just probably not feeling good about herself. And in turn, she's ruining his mental health.
Right.
Yeah, she's taking it out on him and refusing to acknowledge his developments as a person.
There was something that I did like when we go to her. We're watching the cartoon. Do you remember the cartoon part?
Yeah, that was very well animated, actually.
Well animated, and it was so satisfying for somebody who watched like the old Looney Tunes. Like,
Yeah, it was very Tom and Jerry.
yeah, except he gets the fucking mouse. Like, he gets the mouse. Like, I've never seen that happen before.
Yeah.
I had a legit.
I mean,
like, that was pretty
whenever
cool.
you watch Roadrunner, you like
Get him. Just
I remember,
smug.
This smug bastard.
Smug bird.
He like stops at the end of the road just so he can meet me.
Just to piss him off more. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that was, and I think that's tied to, again, where, again, the central character is a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to view it like a comedian archetype is going to be hypersensitive to any criticism, especially from his mom, especially from his friends, so...
Mom's supposed to be number one.
Yeah. And again, like, there was a scene, like, it's a throwaway one, it really doesn't mean much, but there's a scene when he's in bed with Laura Flynn Boyle.
Yeah.
And he leans over to her, and it's right before they're about to go to sleep, and he's just like, hey, I came up with some new material. And she doesn't even care to hear his joke. She just is like, oh, you're out of milk. And then it ends. Like,
Yeah.
Jeez.
But it's things like that, again, where it's like, she's never portrayed to be like a horrible character. In fact, at times she says all the right things whenever they show up at her diner after the comedy shows, in fact. Like, she always says, like, oh, I knew you'd be great. Oh, I knew they love you, even though Bill Paxton's lying about how it went over. But it's those important sequences when he's actually trying to be intimate with her and be like, hey, it's kind of a big deal. Like, I'm working on my material. It's like, and it's kind of, suggests that they just got done, like, having sex. And,
Yeah, no.
But, she's okay with that with him. But, like, when it comes to hearing, like, his material or whatever, she's just indifferent.
I kind of want to rewatch this now, just because of what, like, how you put it, like, the heightened reality. Like, I think there's some stuff going on with, like, just mental illness in general with this movie.
Right.
Because I would say that he's depressed. More or less, he's depressed. And I think that the reason why back's turned, she's just not really caring that much is because he probably is just low energy, just doesn't really feel good about himself. And you can't feed off of somebody and have good energy as well.
Right.
So I think that's kind of why she's just like kind of indifferent.
I think that all like feeds into the resolution of the story. Is that, to me, I viewed it as like, if you strip away all the weirdness of it, like if you take it down to the barest of bones, it's like a comedian's path to not success, but just like finding their act.
Right.
And the biggest thing that comedians need to do to gain material is live life. And it's kind of like this is just a speed bump in his life that kind of got him rolling, I guess. Where it's like, instead of trying to create these jokes just from the ether, now he's like drawing from his actual experiences. He's actually starting to live a bit.
Well, back to like the stand-up comedy, the audience doesn't laugh with him, and he's trying to connect with them. And he even mentions it, like, people like jokes when you try to connect with them, but they can't connect with him. But at the end,
well, it's because he's not putting any of himself in the jokes.
Yeah,
like it's just
exactly
stuff. It's just noise.
And real quick, the way this ends is that they go on the show. What is it? So they're on TV. They perform.
They go on the Twinkie Doodle show.
Twinkie Doodle. They go out. Everyone sees them. They kill. Rob Lowe approaches them, says, hey, we're going to take you to Hollywood. You're going to be famous. And the day they're supposed to leave, Judd Nelson wakes up and he no longer has the arm. And so now he's devastated. It's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And normally this is when you would have the happy go like, oh, you never needed the arm. You were funny all along. But instead it doesn't happen. Instead they say, nah, fuck it. Bring along the accordion guy. We're good with him.
Better.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had a Rob Lowe joke that I wrote down watching this. You'll get it for sure. Because I saw him and I'm like, this is kind of his character from Wayne's World. He's looking at this act and I'm like, purchase feeble 3-arm / accordion comedy act and exploit it. Sorry.
That's literally his character, though.
Yeah,
And honestly, I mean, it's really honestly a cameo role. So I feel like that was really, he got to wear the prosthetic nose and teeth. And
he had fun with it. And
mocking people exactly like that.
yeah,
right?
people that he probably had to deal with before his career took off.
Exactly. So, but anyway, the end is that Bill Paxton leaves, goes off to become a big star, and then Judd Nelson is alone now because there's this awkward sequence where Bill Paxton caused Laura Flynn Boyle and him to split up.
Yeah, that
Creepy sequence.
That was weird.
Yeah, it was a little odd.
The only thing I'll say about it, and I don't defend it because, again, it's a sequence that makes me uncomfortable, and I don't think it was necessary. The only thing I can think of, though, is in this era of cinema, a lot of sequences like that were done to make fun of the movies from like the 1950s where like John Wayne would essentially pin somebody up against a wall and kiss them.
Yeah.
And they'd be punching him and kicking him and shit, and then all of a sudden they fall in love and that's the resolution.
Yeah.
Because like I know in like Heathers there's some awkward scenes like that too with like Christian Slater and Winona Ryder where you watch it now in this context and it's like that's disgusting.
Yeah.
But at the time it was making fun of like this dashing hero just grabbing a woman by her mane and shoving his tongue down her throat, and that's what shows her that he's this wonderful, supportive husband-like figure.
Well, we actually have a pin in Heathers because that's one that I don't think you've seen.
No, I have not.
And I kind of wanted to watch because I don't know how to describe the movie, but you mentioned it, and I might have to rewatch it now because it might be problematic. But Nicolette, Bill Paxton's number one in this movie, is in Heathers. Is also in Heathers.
Yeah.
Who's also. That's odd that she's kind of playing a similar character where we're kind of laughing at her weight and she's...
Yeah.
Well, I mean, here's some things to remember too. Like, and again, the only reason I would ask you guys to go through watching this terrible, terrible film is it gives you some perspective that I think gets lost in the era we're in with movies. Like, we're in an awkward time now where there's so much data that the data is actually driving more things and creating films than actual creativity. Now, this is an example when creativity is given too much freedom and nothing reins it back in as a reminder that, like, hey, people might not get this, or, hey, this is just kind of gross. We shouldn't do that.
Well,
but when you take that all into account, you have to figure, like, who do you think this guy drew inspiration from? Definitely David Lynch. Definitely John Waters.
John Waters, big time.
That was that era. He was, like, the next generation of guys who saw those movies, blew his mind, and wanted to recreate that sort of environment.
Terry Gilliam, did he do Brazil?
yes.
Yeah, that was the one that I saw was Brazil.
Like, taking things back to a previous episode that Kyle and I did, Nothing But Trouble. I mentioned that earlier. I like to think of this as the Beetlejuice era of Hollywood. So Beetlejuice came out, 88, I think?
It was...
And it made all the money.
It's
like, it made ridiculous amounts of money, and look at what it is. It is crazy nonsense, heavy production design. The art department had a field day with it. Does it make a whole lot of sense? Not really. No. But it's thoroughly enjoyable, and it made everyone very rich. And for the next God knows how many years, Tim Burton was cranking out movies on an annual basis, like cleaning up, just raking in cash. And what that brings to mind is movies like Nothing But Trouble and The Dark Backward, where it's like, if you're a Hollywood producer and you're looking at Beetlejuice and you're telling yourself, well, that crazy horse shit made a lot of money. This script has some crazy shit in it. It's like, maybe if we do that again, if we give this guy the keys to the castle, maybe he'll make us all really rich with this weird horse shit that everyone's really into at this moment in time.
I would argue, too, that this was right in the era where this is the first time you were starting to see people actually go to film school or actually studying film as an art form. Because when you look at some previous directors from it, it was always you always hear the story they just kind of like stumbled into it. Like, you would essentially have the guy who went from like carrying camera equipment around, like all of a sudden is directing Hollywood blockbusters. This was the first time where there were actually like people who had resumes they could submit to producers and be like, hey, look at my little indie film I made in college that kind of has parallels to like Blue Velvet or whatever. And as a producer who is still trying to figure out that formula I was describing, it's like right now there's a formula for anything. Throw fucking this and that and whatever. You'll make some money.
Yeah.
They didn't have that. They were establishing it. And that's how you got these things greenlit, where it was like, fuck it, let's trust this kid. You know, the actors seem happy. Like, why not?
I think through your lens of like a heightened reality where we're seeing everything from how Judd Nelson's character would perceive it, I can see where this could have been a good movie and why they could have been excited about the script, because we've kind of touched on like the positive elements, even though it's all shit, like it's not a good movie. But we've touched on some of the elements, like I see what they were trying to do there, and where did it go wrong from there?
Well, to me, I mentioned this with the performances. It's not a low-effort production.
Mm-mm.
Like, there's actually a level of polish to this that shows that care was taken in the filming of scenes and the reviewing of the script, like production design in particular. That's why Beetlejuice came to mind, is because the production design of this film is very detailed. You mentioned Terry Gilliam. It has that, like, cluttered look to it. But it's an organized clutter.
Mm-hmm,
where if you look at the construction of Judd Nelson's apartment.
I was just going to say, he has a bathtub in his kitchen.
Yes. He has a bathtub in his kitchen. If you look at the shelf that's over his bed, there's all sorts of ornaments and weird little knickknacks and stuff. Somebody cared.
Yes.
Somebody put a lot of time and effort into putting that together.
Him.
Just like Nothing But Trouble. Gorgeous film to look at. But when you really pay attention to what's happening, good luck trying to follow it, and good luck trying to be entertained by it.
When you step into the Aykroyd's minds, yeah.
I'm sure the director liked the music. Fuck that. I think it's garbage. And
I knew you were going to mention that.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I can't get it out of my head because it was terrible. And it just, like, slams into your brain, like, the moment this movie starts. Like, from moment one. But, again, it feels like one of those things where maybe the creative energies were being directed towards the wrong elements. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe the script needed a little more polish. Maybe some of these themes needed to become more explicit and just text as opposed to subtext. Because there's a lot of attention to detail put into the production design and the structure of the performances. But it feels like maybe somebody was putting the wrong things under the magnifying glass. Like the signage with the Blumps company and stuff. Did we really need to have that in every shot?
No. Back to the necrophilia. Sorry.
That's so one of those mark that moment.
Yeah, that's quite the transition.
You'll know it when you see it. So you mentioned that maybe Bill Paxton's character was so likable that they threw this into, like, no, this guy's a dirtbag. As the movie progresses, like, I'd say that the scene with Laura Flynn Boyle where he just hits on her, like, I think you could have left out the necrophilia and we just could have gone with that.
I agree.
I think that
I agree. My take on it is, I think one of the ways you could have made this a better film is I think that they should have ran with that idea of that corporation. What was it? Yeah. Blumps. I think they should have created it where this truly was kind of like a area that's on the outskirts of the corporate world, where honestly kind of how this city's set up now, where you have like the nice fancy like waterfront, like these people have made it, they're part of the Blumps family, and then there's the trash that lives on the outskirts, and everyone's trying to get through that gate to become a part of the Blumps, whatever. And that they should have made it where him actually going to Hollywood was that, like, this is your escape, like, and that's why Bill Paxton's so desperate to join him, and that's why like it should be portrayed where every single character needs to get out, because otherwise you're destined to end up like all the people in the comedy club, who are literally all 70-year-old people, chain smoking zombies, getting drunk just to pass the time. Like, it's suggested, but I think they needed to emphasize it. They needed to have some fantasy elements. They need to have Judd Nelson actually portrayed like what he's seeing, like maybe have him actually be a dashing figure for a change in his head, or maybe have him fantasize about being successful.
He never does actually fantasize.
There's like 2 dream sequences in this movie.
And they're awkward. They're weird.
They're both like hyper real, but not to the extent that it feels like a dream. Like none of the production design or the angles or the lighting suggests it's a dream. It just looks like every other shot we've seen. Like the first dream sequence we get is Bill Paxton comes into Judd Nelson's apartment with James Caan in tow, and he's like, "I'm gonna help you out, buddy!" Yeah. And James Caan pulls out a butcher knife and hacks off the arm from his back, and then he wakes up. But the construction of that scene, like from a visual standpoint, it looks exactly like everything else that's preceded.
I thought it was actually happening.
Yeah. It's like that. You did nothing to tip me off that was a dream. Like, why didn't you push the envelope a little bit? Make it even more crazy. Like, paint James Caan's face red and like make him a demon man.
Or just clean it up. That's all you need
That
to
would've
do
been
to
more
make it
interesting.
obvious. Just make it clean, because the second fantasy one's the beach one,
Yeah,
right?
the beach. When he's with Laura Flynn Boyle, like he has a dream sequence where she comes out of the ocean, filmed in reverse, which looks really stupid. And yeah, he's like embracing her, but then all of a sudden she draws back in terror because he's covered in arms, and then she runs away from him, and he wakes up. But it's all shot in a very plain, kind of matter of fact sort of way.
I definitely felt Eraserhead. As
Yeah,
you mentioned. Yeah.
For sure.
Big
Definitely.
time.
Going back to what you're saying about escape,
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have been beautiful in this movie. Brazil. There's a couple of shots, not many, in that movie where I forget the name of the gal who plays his love interest in it, but they're on a truck and they're driving to the outskirts, to the factory zone, and you get this nice wide shot of a miniature, and it's like the entire freeway is lined like end to end with billboards, so you can't see beyond the billboards, but beyond the billboards is just like just
Garbage.
nothing. It's just like there's nothing there, and then there's the gigantic city, and then the factory, and in between that, nothing.
Right.
I think that would have been really awesome if they had that in this movie. Like, just imagine a scene of like a bus that never stops where they live, and like Bill Paxton trying to chase it, or like it does stop, but it's like always packed. So like there's like a guy standing in the doorway, and you need to like mash your way in there. So it's like the escape route, but it's always just out of reach. I think that would have been a nice tease that like shows the desperation and makes it very clear that these characters are stuck and that they can't stay here.
And I think that was what they were going for.
But they didn't show it at
They
all,
don't show it well, but I think that's what the necrophilia scene was supposed to be. Was saying, hey, we're in this shitty part of town where like people are literally garbage to the point where they're just discarded amongst your daily waste. And like, yeah, it's a gross scene with Bill Paxton, but outside of that, it was more. What they should have just had is a sequence of him finding a body in the dump and not doing anything.
That would have done. That would have
like,
done it. Like when they're the one time we see them on the job and they're doing a really shitty job.
Yeah, they're just throwing garbage.
They're not even throwing it into the truck. They're like bouncing it off the truck.
Bill Paxton just picks up something, looks at it, and puts it back down.
They're terrible garbage men. I mean, that would have been really novel though if like they find a corpse and don't even react to it. They just throw it in like
Exactly.
you would
That
anything else. That would have sold it for me. That would have done quite a bit to tell me what kind of world this is.
That would have darkened the tone a little bit too much.
It's
I know.
a movie covered head to toe in shit.
I know.
Bill Paxton is not clean in
I'm
a single
on your
shot of this
side.
movie. But you mentioned John Waters, and while I'm not while I haven't actually seen his films, I'm familiar with his oeuvre. And the one thing I know of John Waters is that despite putting some awful imagery in his films and putting some terrible actors in his films, the one thing I do know about him is that he has a deep, genuine love for all of those people. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I really notice about this one is that it does feel like David Lynchian or John Waters-esque, but without that extra level of sincerity. Because like the Nicolette lady, his number one. Bill Paxton has a very heavyset girlfriend, I guess. And then two other gals that show up. It's like Cherry and something else.
I don't know.
But these ladies are obese, and it's kind of played for laughs.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the reason for them casting obese women is that they're like props. They're like elements of the scenery. They're meant to elicit a response, in this case laughter, whereas like someone like John Waters wouldn't have done that. He would put them there as actors, as
they're humans.
Yeah.
They exist for a reason.
And even the zombies in the club and stuff, like there's just several close-ups of people with like ruddy complexion under horrible lighting that makes them look as awful as possible, and it's very clear that they were cast strictly because they look awful. And so it has that negative vibe to it that feels exploitative.
I think the difference between it is this is a young guy trying to mimic that and not understanding what you're describing.
Exactly.
Because I think with John Waters, you're talking a lot of those bad actors are people that came from his neighborhood or came from the gay communities he ran in or with, or it were people that meant something to him, and so it was less important the performance and more just showing that they're genuine humans. David Lynch is David Lynch. He's in his own little world.
No, yeah, no, he's a mad genius.
But there is that component of like you can tell he overthinks everything to the point where
how many years did Eraserhead take?
7, I believe.
7 years with that.
Yeah.
7 years in that
7
world.
years.
7 years with that haircut.
If I'm not mistaken, yeah.
7
It was about 7 years. Would you like dessert? Are we in a restaurant? Yeah, David Lynch, we're in a restaurant.
But you look at like Wild at Heart, for instance, like David Lynch, where it's like it's another one where it's hyper real and it's exaggerated, and you have Nicolas Cage doing this over the top like Elvis impersonation throughout it, But again, it's done in you just kind of accept that this is the world. And this one, you're trying to figure it out, and by the end, you get a sense of like what the universe is, and you don't care. Because you're just like, fuck this movie, I want it to be over with.
Yeah.
Like,
Is this movie the premise of Seinfeld? A stand-up comedian trying to find his material? Like, if this is basically the end is just like you said, he wasn't able to connect with anybody, and then he finally was able to connect with them at the end, and he was successful.
Well, that's
interesting.
That's how I thought of it. It's like a comedian's journey. Like finding his act.
That's more like if you get down to the bare bones. I think
I mean, you could even interpret the arm as like veering into prop comedy or something, like trying his hand at being Carrot Top and failing.
Well, I would argue that too. Yeah, like it's even fascinating now because actually the comedians who are making it, their whole thing is everything's got to be real or rooted in reality. And Seinfeld was kind of the original of that, but you look at like the offshoots of like the Louis C.K. of like the. There's one in particular who has a show on Netflix. Her name's Maria Bamford. She's been around for a while.
Yes, I do know exactly what you're talking about.
Her show is kind of the same sort of like Pee-wee's Playhouse, like over-the-top surreal, but a lot of that is telling her story of how she became a successful comedian, because her whole act is about having a nervous breakdown trying to become a comedian. And so like when she portrays like her people she grew up in her hometown, it's always these like over-the-top chipper people and church lady folk and...
Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah.
Think of that. Like it doesn't take place 100% in reality. Like the pastel colors of the neighborhood and the perkiness of the neighbors and stuff. It's a life story, but put through a few filters. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily for entertainment value, but just memory is a hell of a thing sometimes.
Or to emphasize, like, this is how this character felt something.
Yeah.
Like I said, kind of with Judd Nelson's character again, where it's like when his mom's treating him like shit, yeah, she probably is shitty to him, but it really hurts him. And it's really over the top in this movie. And so, I mean, it's a shitty movie.
It's a shitty movie.
This was a shitty movie. I think I wrote in my notes that it was, like, utterly empty. but you told me otherwise now. I do see that it has value. It's not good. But I
can see where there could have been a good movie here.
Yes.
And I'm glad we unpacked it because I'm not gonna. I almost kind of want to watch it again. I'm not going to.
Please don't do that to yourself.
It's free and you're not gonna watch it again.
Yeah, you're probably absolutely right. I'm not gonna watch it again. But yeah, you can take something from it now, like actually unpacking it. But
and again, like I said, kind of the thesis for this was that look at it from the perspective of like, if you love movies, you love to see the director create their art. Mm-hmm. But there has to be some fine tuning because if a director is allowed to just do whatever the fuck they want, which the fun directors always do, seemingly.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you get the dark backward.
And sometimes you get nothing but trouble.
I think Guy Ritchie's doing a backwards walk, actually.
well, yeah, he's given up his control, and he's just like, fuck it, we're doing it. We're doing King Arthur.
Whatever. Like, you're going to pay me how much? Yeah, let's do it.
Like, oh yeah, I hear good things about that Charlie Hunnam. He's a fantastic actor.
Lost City of Zed is good. I know you don't want to watch it.
I keep hearing that,
it's
but
good.
Have you seen Crimson Peak?
I know he's not great.
No, but so this is a period piece. This takes place in like Victorian Europe, and jacked ass Charlie Hunnam is like dressed in like Victorian garb. Yeah. He's just busting at the seams. He looks so out of place.
Well, I mean, he's not going to lose weight in between filming Sons of Anarchy. Like,
well, I mean, yeah. How else are you going to put butts in seats?
Yeah.
All those wives and girlfriends.
He's an Irishman, right?
Something like that. He is
He's
not
from the
American,
UK.
that's for sure.
He's from the UK.
I don't think I've ever seen him actually speak with his natural
I
accent.
haven't
Because I
either.
can't take his American one seriously at all.
Green Street Hooligans, which you're going to be watching eventually.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's a great film.
Okay.
And he's fantastic in it,
Pacific
so.
Rim, he sounded like a surfer bro or something. Like he had this weird, like,
I've heard it's supposed. I've heard it got better on Sons of Anarchy. Apparently, he started off sounding a little British, a little American, and then as it goes on,
Well, you do it for like 8 years. I fucking hope so.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right. Well,
That's how bad this movie was. Like, you're just so desperate to find a jump off.
Let's talk about anything else. Fuck, Charlie Hunnam. Yeah, we have plenty to say about him.
Well, I would like to do another one of these with Matt before I leave. So
Absolutely.
we'll
We'll have to find another time to do a triple threat.
Yeah, I don't know who's gonna pick that one.
Yeah, we'll have to figure it out. This is
Yeah.
a tough negotiation process.
Yes, it is.
All right.
There was no negotiation on this one.
Well, that's the dark backward.
Yes.
I'm glad we all caught up on cinema because
Yes.
I never in a million years would have bothered with this piece of shit otherwise.
Please don't watch it. Please.
If you tell me your brother recommended a movie, I'm probably not going to watch it.